So I am Steven, and I am here with Adrian and Jason. And Adrian and Jason are the lead game designers on this project. And although I once upon a time used to be one of the game designers on the project, I am now kind of a lowly project manager because Adrian and Jason are much, much, much better than I am. And I'm basically just checking in to see what the progress has been since the Kickstarter launched. First and foremost, we should give an incredible shout out to our 4,622 Kickstarter backers. And I'm reading off my screen right now. At this moment in time, we have made $122,000.
Wow.
That is more than double our goal, more than double what we expected to make, which was just 50,000. And in fact, we are incredibly close to one of our most awesome stretch goals, which is life, which is at 150,000. And honestly, I think we'll make it. I think the world we're looking in right now will have life in it. We have 5 days left in the Kickstarter, and I think we'll make that stretch goal.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. It'd be so
Yeah,
cool.
thank you so much, everyone. This game is a dream project to work on, and you guys are making it possible for us.
Yeah,
It's amazing. I mean, this is like, I can't imagine working on a more awesome project than this. So, can I ask, what are we looking at right here? Is this concept art?
No, so this is one of the procedural levels that we've built. We built basically a procedural generator that creates randomized levels, and we spent a lot of time making the levels feel interesting and like they feel like a real place. Oftentimes with procedural stuff you'll see like really cool mountains and stuff, but then you try to run around it doesn't really make sense. So
Wait. So you're saying this is an actual in-game screenshot?
Yeah,
You can see the clouds moving.
Yeah, and
Like, this is something you can run around in?
Yes.
we'll run around in a second, actually. And you can also
Okay, I'm
see,
impressed.
you can
I'm
also see that
impressed.
the sand has settled. So we're still working on having the sand mesh with the terrain properly. So there's a few artifacts of that. You can kind of see the corners are a little bit jagged, but the sand has been procedurally placed and settled down to fill in gaps and stuff like that. So all of this is deformable and we can mess around with it.
So the sand is procedurally generated, and the mountains, are they procedurally generated as well?
Yeah, all of this is procedurally generated.
And what am I seeing up in the sky right here? These like
Those are
rock
not
looking things.
procedurally generated.
Yeah.
Some of those are part of the skybox and objects that are placed outside. And it's to give you the feeling of being on a floating island of rock in the sky.
So those are floating islands out there in the sky. So we're on a floating island right now, and we can see floating islands in the distance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
that is
the
pretty
idea.
cool. I like that. So what made you decide to go with floating islands,
Well,
Jason?
that we knew that we would have to, in order to get the level of detail in each little procedurally generated area, we knew that we would have to kind of isolate areas off so that they were not like infinite. And we have, a couple ideas in the works for how we're going to do that smoothly, and one of them is floating islands. Another one would be regular islands in an ocean. Another one might be sort of a crater where all the life is sort of enclosed within a giant cliff walls and stuff like that. And we've been playing around with them, and the first one we wanted to try out visually and just get the feel for was the floating island. So
Yeah, and
just because it's
Jason,
fun and it's pretty.
and
Jason, you and I have talked before about your approach to designing a world, and I know that you like to approach it at the planetary level, essentially. Like you like to think about the entire planet. So tell me about these floating islands. Are they is the entire planet composed of floating islands, or is it a small part, or what are you envisioning here?
I actually picture this as sort of just part of the planet where there are floating islands. I don't imagine that the whole planet is floating islands, but the more I thought about this, I don't know. It's kind of strange, but I kind of picture this planet as like part solid, part gas giant. I don't know if that makes sense,
Yeah,
but like
totally.
there are enormous chunks of planet and crust sort of circling around, and on that you would feel like you were on a terrain with an ocean, and you would feel like it would go on forever, but eventually it would sort of break off and you'd see these little floating islands. So you could have things like oceans and ground and hard mountains and rock and stuff, but then you could also have these parts where there's and I know that doesn't exist in science, so it kind of bothers me a little bit, but I'm kind of just trying to imagine this magical world where like, I don't know, anything is possible, right? So that's where I'm at right now with it.
Okay, so we're on a place in the CodeSpells planet where there happen to be floating islands, maybe lots of them. And we're on one of them right now. And this one of them, Adrian, you're telling me this one floating island is entirely procedurally generated. You didn't craft any of it. It's like you plugged in some numbers and this island appeared out of nowhere. Is that true?
Yeah, actually right now we have it so that we just set a seed and it creates a random level. So yeah, we didn't do any of this at all. Actually, all of this was placed randomly.
Yeah.
Cool.
We just went through and found really cool sort of, it's sort of like a recipe. Like, we've just been spending a lot of time going through procedural generation terrain stuff, finding the right recipe of like what makes a good space to play in. Because like Adrian said before, a lot of procedurally generated stuff doesn't feel like it was made for playing a game in, which can be really frustrating. So we found one that generated sort of cool mountains, but they had very definitive valleys between them, so it is a little bit maze-like, and there's a lot of good flat space to run on, and you can see across the map, so you can sort of hide and seek each other around in the map if you wanted. It just sort of like makes it for like discovery and also playability rather than just a big bumpy kind of mess. And we did that through finding like erosion techniques and stuff that leveled the ground out the way we wanted and made it feel also like kind of geologically real, which was cool.
Right, so both of you are envisioning a very complex world with water and life and creatures and heat and humidity and weather and all sorts of things that dynamically change in real time, and that is not something easy to simulate on a computer, but it actually does become manageable if you simulate a small area, like one floating island at a time.
Yeah, and right now we're going with, this island's about 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, so it's still pretty big. I mean, it's really large for a multiplayer map, so it still offers a lot of variability.
Cool. So I'm going to die if you don't prove to me that this is not concept art. Can we run around in this now?
Alright, so I'll click start, and I'll take a second here. And here we are. Okay. So now
oh my gosh,
we're in the world, and we can
oh my god,
run around. And you can see the kind of those artifacts I was talking about with the sand, where we haven't finished meshing it with the rock.
Okay, okay, I see. So you're going to smooth out the sand lines. But actually, I really like it. So, okay, so you have areas that are sand. Now, is that real sand? I mean, can you interact with that sand with magic?
Yes.
In the same way as in the... Yeah.
So we can pull out our dig spell and dig in there.
Oh my god. Oh my god, that's phenomenal.
It's very shiny sand right now.
And now the water, so is that water dynamic? I mean, in the
Yeah.
sense of, like, if you mess with the sand, the water won't move, right?
So it actually will. If we pull in
Oh
over
my,
here, you can see that it starts filling up with sand. Um,
oh my God.
I'm
Wait,
gonna
wait,
do
wait. So
it.
you actually made dynamic water. You made the water, you actually simulated water physics on this island.
Yeah, so this water is all working dynamically as we move around. So as we start building trenches and stuff, the water starts filling up.
So you have control over the sand, but the rock is immutable. You can't control what the rock does.
Right. So
So
it all.
it's kind of like the bedrock in Minecraft. Like there is a limit to what you can change with magic.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, this is kind of like the barest skeleton of a world. Like, there is only terrain, sand, and water. It's like you're on a newborn planet. In fact, there hasn't even been, like, we don't even have, like, boulders and rocks placed that you could pick up yet. Like, we're just figuring out the most basic systems of,
Right.
like, the major landforms and where sand and water would go.
But from my conversations with you in the past, Jason, this is consistent with your approach to designing environments. You like to design them from the most basic systems up. Is that true?
Yes. If you look, like, if Adrian looks over to that ridge over there, or right up ahead of him, you could see, like, about, half the way up the screen, there's an actual ridge created that runs across the entire map. That's from tidal erosion. So we made it so that there would be when we generate the landscape, like, that somewhere in the millions of years of this planet's history, there was an ocean at one point at this level that eroded the ground away and has since gone away. And, like, that sort of thing, it just means something to someone who looks at an environment, even if they don't realize what it means. It feels more real when you look across a landscape and you see that line. To me, that matters.
Right. So
And
that stripe of color, you're talking about that stripe of color right there, tells you
well, it's
something
just
about the geological history of this planet.
yeah, it's not just the color, but it actually sculpted the land on that island across from where Adrian was just looking. You could see it. There's an actual line of terrain that is dug out from, millions of years of waves hitting it and eroding it away. It's not even just a color in the texture, it's actually something you can run along in the game. And I don't know, that to me, that just, you need those kind of bones underneath everything, because once we start placing plants and we start placing boulders you could pick up, we want them all to make sense in a way that, you understand why those things are there and why they're available where they are and things like that.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and this is something I've gotten from both of you in our conversations, that you want the world to make sense. You want every system, every single complex system in the world to work together in a way that makes sense. I guess, makes sense according to our intuition that we bring from the real world, right? You're actually trying to recreate the real world in inside of CodeSpells in a way that doesn't feel fake or artificial.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
simplified, but still in a way that you can read and understand, because of the nature of the game. If a player can create any spell they want using just their own wits and their own imagination, then they need to know what is able to be manipulated with that spell. And so everything in the world has to be simple and easy to understand. And so that's why we want it to all have a logical connection. So you could say, like, oh, if I move that rock or I lift the sand, I can get the river to go that way. Like, I know that because that makes sense in the real world. That's what would happen,
Right, right. Now, so you can so as a wizard in a world like this with so many complex systems, you essentially have power over any of these systems. Like, I notice you're manipulating the sand system right now because you're using earth magic, and you can use earth to manipulate the water system as well. We saw that a little bit earlier when you were manipulating where the water can flow just by manipulating the contours of the sand. So essentially, you end up with this incredible ability to shape the world around you, and interact with the systems that you're simulating.
Yeah. Totally.
Yep.
And we can actually, I don't know, I can, so this is kind of a cheat right now. This is all super early visuals for the JavaScript stuff, but we have a
that's fine.
debug system for adding water. We haven't figured out exactly how we'll do this later on, but for now I can do this ridiculous thing, and we can add water that
oh my gosh, that is awesome.
Flows down, and you can see it like it expands and flows down the side of the mountain properly, and it goes on top of it.
It'll actually fill in areas that are concave. It'll actually make pools.
Yeah, you can see it left a little pool right here, and that'll just stay
there. My gosh. Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Over here, it connected back with the actual shoreline. So
that is amazing. That is really, really cool.
And these kind of like bare bones things, like so that you understand like the water goes downhill and fills in those holes and all that stuff is really cool. But for people who want to who want to know, like, well, what is the game going to be? Is it just going to be me pushing water around? Like, these are just the kinds of things that we need to get done first so that we can make the world feel real. And then the more systems we layer on, things like that could eventually turn into, like, creating a giant flood that washes away, an opponent's crazy rock monster, or it could be, there's all sorts of things that could turn into gameplay wise.
I love it.
Eventually, which is what we just need to have enough of these simple systems layered on top of one another for them to become meaningful in terms of gameplay.
I love it. Yeah, I've always believed that gameplay comes from the environment. Gameplay is an emergent property on top of a interesting environment, and this is phenomenal.
So I just added a couple with an absurd amount of mana, so they'll last a long time.
Wow!
I'm basically cheating the system, but I basically made a waterfall up there, so there's some orbs just constantly dropping, and yeah.
That is incredible. That is really, really cool.
Yeah, there's still, so you can see some artifacts of there's some slight hexagon shapes here. So we're still working on the visuals for the water. We want to incorporate
now, Adrian,
flow maps for the water.
didn't actually see the hexagon shapes there. I didn't actually see the hexagon shapes.
Yeah, so you can see some generating down there. It's just an artifact of the cellular automata type calculations that we're doing, but we're gonna mask those with different things later. But particularly, we want to add flow maps to the water, so the direction that the water is moving will actually be visible. Right now, there's not really much of that, so even though you can see the water moving, like if you look over here, it doesn't appear to be flowing in that direction properly, so we still have a lot of work to do in that case, but the water is moving pretty much like we'd want it to. So.
Right. Now, actually, can you look up in the sky for a moment? I just noticed there's a moon or a large planet up in the sky. Now, this is pretty cool. Jason, can you tell us about this?
So, when we were first talking about CodeSpells and the world it was set in, one of our, we didn't want to focus too much on lore and like world narrative of like, but it helps when you're building a world to sort of have a general idea of how it's created and what it's like and why are there wizards on this planet and what goes on there. So we decided that the planet that you play on has a sort of twin planet that it orbits around, and the idea of that planet being so close and it being so big in the sky has sort of I don't know, it's sort of like it's like their big symbol of hope and knowledge on this planet. Like they see that other planet and they sort of understand that they live on something like that. So it's sort of like I don't know, it's almost like a cool combination of mythology and actual, astronomy and science, that they understand that they live on a planet in space, and that has sort of like separated their sort of, I don't know, their understanding of their place in the universe.
I see. So it's
possibly makes them better at being wizards.
So it's like if we here on Earth were to look up at the moon, and if the moon was different in such a way that we recognize the moon as being exactly like Earth, it had mountains and water on it, and we would hypothesize that maybe there are people on that other place looking up at us at the exact same time. How might that have shaped our history?
Yeah, if we had skipped ahead to understanding that the Earth was around like thousands of years before we knew that the Earth was round. Yeah.
And so essentially, so I know you haven't worked too much on the lore yet, but this other planet out there is the centerpiece of all of the lore, it seems like, because the creatures, the wizards that evolved on this planet that we're on right now would have looked up at this other planet and wandered about it from time immemorial.
Yes. Yeah. And that sort of has driven their just this culture of like understanding the world they live on and understanding the elements and understanding how to manipulate them and learning how to use magic. So that other planet has sort of driven them towards this sort of progressive, supernatural kind of science world where they can, it isn't just about like, oh, I can use magic and make anything I want happen. It's like the understanding of the systems of the world is what allows you to use magic.
Right. So do you think they'll ever get there?
I don't know.
Will they ever visit the other planet?
Somebody might. I mean, I think
we should get to those.
The idea
we should get to the floating islands first.
Yeah, exactly. The idea of going to the other planet is probably a core myth in their culture.
Amazing. Well, I am incredibly impressed. This is just absolutely breathtaking in terms of just the visuals and the thought behind it and the fact that it actually works. I mean, I'm amazed.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to do, but we feel pretty good about where it's gotten so far. So.
Yeah, it feels really good to run around on like a genuine skeleton of a real world.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just come so far from the Kickstarter, because I remember the Kickstarter videos were all created in essentially a football field-sized environment that you, Jason, it was become an environment that was created out of nothing and at random by the computer, and it looks just as good, maybe even better than what you handcrafted.
Yeah, no, it's great, and that sort of like, being able to like, make a rock texture and make a ground texture and then just put them into this magic system and see it spit out these incredible worlds is just, I don't know. To me, it's like it's like an artist's dream. Not because I don't have to do the work, because I love doing that work. It's fun, but it's just so magical to like actually get to like explore a space and not know every inch of it because you placed all the rocks, you know, like
There's still work to do, but it's just more fun work. Like you still have
yeah,
to create all the rules for the worlds that are created and for the foliage and all that. Like you still have to build the core components that are used for that. So it's like it's still a tremendous amount of artwork. It's just
yeah,
directed slightly
and
differently and used
yeah, and
more often in a different way.
yeah, and this is also sort of like one example of a skeleton for a, you know, for a type of environment. Like by plugging in different numbers and playing around with different erosion techniques, we could come up with, you know, different environments too that, you know, swapping out the textures, making new different types of rocks and moss and stuff, you could get a whole different effect. Uh, so this is just one of the iterations of it.
It's amazing. Yeah, I love the vision. I love the complexity. I love the fact that it's real and actually works. And I have to say, I'm just incredibly impressed.
Thanks,
Well,
man.
I'm definitely looking forward to the next updates. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure that all our audience is too.
Yeah, I am too. I am excited to figure out the rest of this stuff and expand it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll talk to you all later.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.